My hand was shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Not from fear. From the effort of not laughing. Behind me, in the dining room, I could hear champagne corks popping, the clink of my sister's new diamond bracelet against her wine glass, my uncle's booming laugh rattling the chandelier my grandfather had installed in 1987. I stood alone in the hallway, staring at 10 digits on a piece of yellowed paper, and I dialed. It rang once. A woman's voice, calm and flat, answered. Estate Division Fraud Unit. We've been expecting your call. I closed my eyes. Took you all long enough, I whispered. My name is Marissa Cole. I'm 34 years old, and until 11 days ago, I ran a 14-person logistics consulting firm out of a converted warehouse in Charlotte, North Carolina. A company I built from a card table and a $6,000 loan when I was 26, and grew into a business that billed $2.1 million last year. My grandfather, Walter Cole, was the reason I knew how to do that. He didn't hand me money. He handed me a ledger when I was 19 and said, "Learn to read numbers and no one can ever lie to you about them." When he died at 81, after 4 years of declining health that I managed almost single-handedly, the hospice schedules, the pharmacy runs, the 2 a.m. phone calls when he forgot which decade it was, his estate was valued at $9.4 million. Real estate, an investment portfolio, 2 commercial properties, and the house on Bell River Road he built with his own hands. My sister Dana got $3.1 million. My uncle Rand got the commercial properties, valued around $2.8 million. My cousin Tyler got the Bell River house outright, worth $1.9 million. I got a slip of paper with a phone number on it, folded into an envelope with my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting, and a note. Marissa, when you're ready to know the truth, call this number. Not before. Everyone at the reading of the will laughed. Actually laughed. Guess the golden girl finally got humbled, Dana said, not even bothering to lower her voice. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just folded the envelope, put it in my coat pocket and smiled. Because I already suspected something they didn't. My grandfather never did anything without a reason. And if he'd left me a phone number instead of money, that number was worth more than all of it combined. 3 weeks before he died, I drove out to Bell River Road on a Tuesday afternoon to bring Grandpa his groceries, same as always. His nurse, Priya, met me at the door with her coat already on, mumbling something about a family meeting that had happened that morning. I found my Uncle Rand in the study, still smelling like cigar smoke, standing over Grandpa's old roll-top desk with a stack of papers in his hands and a bottle of his good scotch, the Macallan 25 he kept locked in a cabinet, sitting open on the blotter, 2 glasses poured. Dana was there too, in a blazer I didn't recognize, the kind that costs more than my monthly office rent, scrolling through something on her phone and laughing under her breath. He's barely lucid anymore, Rand was saying, sliding a document toward Grandpa, who sat slumped in his wheelchair by the window, blinking slowly. Just needs your signature right here, Dad. It's the trust restructuring we talked about. Grandpa's hand trembled over the pen. He looked at me the second I walked in, really looked sharp for just a moment, the way he used to look at spreadsheets that didn't balance. Marissa, he said. Get this out of here. Rand laughed it off. He's confused, hon. Doctor said this happens. He capped the pen, patted Grandpa's shoulder like he was patting a dog, and poured himself another 2 fingers of scotch. I didn't say a word. I picked up the groceries, walked to the kitchen, and while I put away the milk, I quietly slid my phone into my coat pocket, screen still recording, angled at the study door. I'd learned, for years into caring for a dying man surrounded by vultures, that silence records better than screaming ever could. That night I listened to the audio twice. Buried under Rand's small talk was one clear sentence. Once he signs, the commercial properties transfer to the new LLC before probate even opens. Nobody outside this room needs to know the timeline. I didn't confront him yet. I called a probate attorney quietly on my lunch break and asked what it would mean if a dying man's assets were moved into an LLC before death, without full family knowledge. She said one word. Concealment. I spent the next 2 weeks pulling public property filings during my breaks between client calls. I found it, A new LLC, Rand Coal Holdings, Bell River Division, registered 11 days after that Scotch and Signature meeting. Grandpa's 2 commercial properties, valued at $2.8 million, listed as in transfer. I brought it up at a family dinner casually over pot roast. Hey, did anyone know Uncle Rand set up a new LLC using the Bell River properties? Rand didn't even blink. That's just standard estate liability shielding, Marissa. Protects the assets from creditors during probate. Totally routine, my accountant handles all of this. You wouldn't understand the tax implications. I nodded slowly. Oh, makes sense. I even smiled and asked him to pass the gravy. Inside, I was already dialing the attorney again. 2 days later, I came back to Bell River to pick up Grandpa's mail, a chore nobody else wanted, and heard Dana's voice through the cracked kitchen window before I even reached the porch. She still thinks it's routine. Dana was saying, giggling to someone on speakerphone. Tyler, I realized. God, she's so easy. Just tell her a big word and she nods like a golden retriever. Meanwhile, Rand's basically cutting her out before Grandpa's even in the ground. Tyler's voice tinny through the phone. Just make sure she doesn't get the Bell River file. That's the one with the real numbers. I stood on the porch for a full 30 seconds without moving, holding a stack of junk mail, memorizing the phrase, the Bell River file. The one with the real numbers. I remembered from childhood that Grandpa kept a small fireproof safe behind a false panel in his study closet, something he'd shown me once years ago, saying, "Only you know this is here, Marissa. That's on purpose." The night after the funeral, while the rest of the family was at Dana's house drinking his good wine, I let myself into Bell River with my old key. Behind the panel, the safe was still there. Inside, a manila folder labeled Bell River, real, an old flash drive, and the same handwriting from my envelope. If you're reading this, you followed the numbers instead of the noise. That's my girl. Inside the folder, a full accounting of Rand's LLC transfer, time-stamped, cross-referenced with bank statements showing $340,000 quietly moved out of Grandpa's operating account in the 6 months before his death. Money Rand had told everyone was medical expenses. I called Rand, kept my voice soft, almost apologetic. Hey, I found some old bank statements while going through Grandpa's files. There's a few withdrawals I don't recognize. Probably nothing, right? Rand's tone sharpened into practiced calm. Marissa, that's all documented. Home health aides, private nursing, medical equipment. Dad's care was expensive at the end. You were around, you saw the bills. I had seen the bills. They totaled $61,000, not $340,000. Right, I said. That tracks. Sorry to bother you. I hung up, and for the first time in 4 years, I let myself smile without performing it for anyone. I made a decision that night at my kitchen table, staring at the flash drive. I was going to become the family fool. If they thought I was sharp, they'd hide the rest. If they thought I was a heartbroken, slightly dim woman still grieving her grandfather, still grateful for scraps, they'd get careless. Careless people talk. So I built a performance. I started slouching more at family gatherings, letting my hair go unstyled, wearing the same faded cardigan Grandpa used to tease me about. I let my voice go soft and a little wobbly, the way it had genuinely sounded in the first raw week after he died. Except now I brought it out on command. I started saying things like, "I just don't understand all this legal stuff. You know? Grandpa always handled the numbers for me." While internally I was running the exact same spreadsheets that had grown my company to 7 figures. I let Dana explain basic finance to me at Thanksgiving, nodding along, thanking her for her patience. I even carried around the same folded envelope with the phone number in it, visible in my coat pocket, letting them see it, letting them assume I was too sentimental or too slow to have called it yet. Let them think grief broke me, I told myself. Broken people don't get audited. Broken people get invited back into the room. It worked. Within 3 weeks, Rand stopped lowering his voice around me entirely. I needed one thing. A confession on record, in a setting where they couldn't later claim it was doctored or taken out of context. So I built a bait. I told Dana in my softest, most defeated voice, that I'd found some paperwork of Grandpa's about the commercial properties, and that I honestly didn't understand it, and could she and Rand maybe just walk me through it, so I stopped worrying? I suggested we do it at Rand's house over dinner, so it doesn't feel so official. I even offered to bring dessert. What they didn't know: I'd already had a small legal one-party consent recorder, legal in North Carolina, sewn into the lining of the same cardigan they'd watched me wear for a month. And in my coat pocket, next to the folded envelope with the phone number, my phone sat with a live call open to my attorney's voicemail box, silently recording, buzzing once, softly, against my leg every time it stayed connected. The night before, I lay in bed and thought about Grandpa's voice. Learn to read numbers and no one can ever lie to you about them. I read the numbers. Now I just needed them to say them out loud. Rand hosted the dinner exactly as planned. His wife's good china, Dana in a new dress, Tyler pouring wine like he owned the vineyard. I wore the cardigan. I brought the pecan pie. I sat with my hands folded, playing small. Halfway through dinner, Rand got that familiar swagger in his voice, the one he used when he thought he was performing for an audience that already adored him. "You know, Marissa," he said, refilling his glass, "some people just aren't built for money. Your grandfather knew that. That's why he gave you a phone number instead of a fortune." The table laughed. Dana raised her glass in a mock toast. "To knowing your place," she said. That was the line. That was the moment I stopped playing weak. I set down my fork. I didn't raise my voice. "Funny you should mention the phone number," I said. "I called it 11 days ago." The laughter died. "It was a state fraud division," I continued, calm even. "Grandpa set it up 2 years before he died, after he first suspected Rand was moving money. He left instructions for me to call it the day the will was read, because he knew by then I'd have found the folder in his safe. The one labeled Bell River Real." Rand's face went white. That's private banking information you had no right." $340,000, I said, still calm. "Moved out of his operating account in 6 months. Logged as medical expenses that only totaled $61,000. I looked at Dana. "And I have you on a recording calling me a golden retriever for believing it." Dana's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the hardwood. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the manila folder, the one from the safe, and set it on the table next to the broken glass. Then I pulled out the folded envelope with the phone number, the one they'd all mocked me for keeping, and tore it slowly in half. "I don't need it anymore," I said. "I already made the call." That was when the doorbell rang. 2 investigators from the State Estate Fraud Division, whom I'd arranged to arrive at exactly 8:30, walked in as Rand's wife opened the door, confused. They asked for Rand Cole by name. Nobody at that table said another word. Within 6 weeks, here's what happened. Rand Cole was formally charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and elder fraud, tied to the $340,000 in unaccounted withdrawals and the improperly transferred LLC. The commercial properties were frozen pending a civil suit and eventual reversion to the estate. Dana, who had co-signed paperwork on the LLC without disclosing it to the rest of the family, was named in the civil suit and lost her seat on her country club's board within a month, after the story quietly made its way through her social circle. Tyler, who had helped hide the Bell River file, was forced to relinquish the house on Bell River Road pending the fraud investigation, the same house he bragged about renovating with his inheritance. Grandpa's longtime housekeeper, Marta, who'd worked for the family for 19 years and had been quietly let go by Rand right after the funeral to cut costs, I rehired personally, out of my own company's payroll, at double her old salary, and helped her set up a small cleaning business of her own. Priya, the hospice nurse who tried to warn me the day of the Scotch and signature meeting, I wrote a full character reference for, which the state used in its case against Rand. The court eventually restored the $340,000, plus interest, to the estate, and awarded it, along with the frozen properties, to me as the only heir who had documented in real time evidence of the fraud. For months later, on a night with sleeting rain hammering the windows, there was a knock at my door. It was Rand. Thinner. Unshaven. No coat. Just a soaked cardigan not unlike the one I used to wear. His car, I later learned, had been repossessed the week before. "Marissa," he said, voice cracking, "I need somewhere to stay. Just for a few nights. Family's still family." I stood in the doorway, the warm light behind me, and thought of Grandpa's handwriting. "When you're ready to know the truth." "You taught me that word, actually," I said quietly. "Routine. You used it every time you lied to me." I paused. "I hope you find somewhere warm tonight." "It won't be here." I closed the door gently, no slam, and turned the deadbolt. My husband, Eli, was waiting in the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea already poured. He didn't ask what happened. He just slid 1 mug toward me and said, "Grandpa would be proud of you." I sat down, wrapped my hands around the warm mug, and for the first time in over a year, I felt something that wasn't performance, wasn't strategy, wasn't grief. It was quiet. Here's what I learned. The people who mock you for what you don't have are usually terrified of what you're quietly learning about what they stole to get theirs. Power was never in the shouting. It was in the folder I kept, the numbers I read, and the patience to wait for the exact right moment to set it down on the table. My grandfather didn't leave me a fortune. He left me the truth and trusted me to find it. So let me ask you, if your family handed you a mystery instead of an inheritance, would you have called the number? Or would you have let it stay folded in your pocket? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if this story hit home for you, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.